The death of noise. There's a truth that people aren't supposed to acknowledge openly. That silence has real power. And the majority of individuals would prefer to exist within a noisy environment than to confront the tranquility of their own thoughts. You've experienced this feeling, haven't you? That subtle discomfort that arises when you're in a crowded space, yet still feel completely unnoticed. The sound of laughter that seems artificial or rehearsed. A sense of warmth that never fully reaches you. You try to convince yourself that this is genuine connection, that this is what it means to be alive. However, deep down, there's an awareness, something primal, telling you that the noise isn't sustaining you. It's actually keeping you in a state of mental slumber. You see, every system you've been a part of, family, school, society, has conditioned you to be afraid of silence. Because silence exposes the realities that noise intentionally hides. It reveals a truth that terrifies most groups. That you might not need them as much as they need you. Niccolò Machiavelli once wrote, "Men are driven by two principal impulses, either by love or by fear." The Prince, 1532. Society has long recognized that fear has a more lasting impact. Therefore, it taught you to be afraid of being alone in a quiet room, to associate solitude with personal failure, and to equate conformity with being virtuous. It instilled in you the idea that isolation is a form of death, while belonging is the key to salvation. However, here's the Machiavellian paradox. The more you strive to belong, the less of your authentic self you have left to offer in the first place. We're born into a collective, but we're not destined to remain trapped within it forever. Somewhere along the way, you've lost sight of this fundamental truth. You've sacrificed your individual voice in pursuit of harmony, and compromised your boundaries to gain acceptance. And each time you laughed when you didn't feel like it, nodded in agreement when you actually disagreed, or remained in a situation when you intuitively knew you should leave, a small piece of yourself disappeared. Until one day, you look at your reflection and come to the unsettling realization that you've become a composite of other people's expectations. That's the moment when the quiet rebellion begins. The silent awakening that goes unacknowledged by the outside world. Most people never progress to this stage of awareness, because to stop performing the expected roles is to risk being ostracized. To stand alone is to invite misunderstanding, criticism, and feelings of isolation, and so, they continue to smile, nod, and obey, desperately convincing themselves that external approval equates to genuine connection, when in reality, it's simply a form of social currency. But there inevitably comes a point, always, when the forced laughter loses its appeal. When the validation from the crowd starts to feel like irritating noise instead of uplifting music. When your own authentic thoughts, the ones you've suppressed beneath layers of superficial noise for years, begin to resurface and whisper to you. This internal whisper is dangerous because, once you hear it, you can't simply ignore it. Nietzsche cautioned about this, stating that, the individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. The tribe, he explained, is like gravity. It constantly pulls you back toward mediocrity. It rewards conformity and comfort, not truth or authenticity. And if you attempt to rise above it, if you dare to engage in independent thought, it won't simply ignore you, it will label you as arrogant, antisocial, and defective, because your very independence threatens the illusion of togetherness that they've so carefully constructed. But what if choosing to withdraw isn't a sign of weakness? What if the person who chooses to step away from the herd isn't running away from life but, instead, consciously walking toward a more meaningful existence? Machiavelli understood this concept better than most. He understood that a leader who constantly seeks public approval will inevitably lose both power and perspective. The wise man, he suggested, acts based on necessity, not on a desire for validation. The same principle applies to you. When you stop performing for the benefit of others, necessity becomes your guiding principle. Silence becomes your trusted ally. You no longer speak to gain approval, you speak to express your own truth. Here's a paradox that few individuals ever truly confront. We claim to be afraid of loneliness, but what we genuinely fear is encountering our true selves. A study conducted in 2014 revealed that 70% of men would rather subject themselves to electric shocks than sit alone with their thoughts for just 15 minutes. Think about that for a moment. We would rather experience physical pain than simply be present with our own minds. That's not just loneliness, that's dependency. The addiction to constant noise has diminished our capacity for peaceful introspection and stillness. You observe evidence of this everywhere. People mindlessly scrolling through their devices as if their lives depended on it. Conversations that sound more like scripted performances than genuine exchanges. Friendships that are based not on authenticity and truth, but on a shared addiction to distraction. We've turned the act of socializing into a basic survival mechanism. Because, deep down, the silence reminds us of something we've been actively trying to avoid: the widening gap between who we truly are and the persona we project to the world. That's why solitude initially feels like a form of detox. The first night spent without the distraction of the crowd feels like withdrawal. Your mind screams, something is terribly wrong, but actually, nothing is wrong. For the first time in a long time, something feels real. The feelings of guilt that surface aren't evidence of a mistake. They're confirmation that you're breaking free from a state of dependency. You're undergoing a detox from the relentless need for approval, from the desperate search for relevance, and from the constant need for reassurance that you exist because others are taking notice of you. However, here's the Machiavellian twist. Once you've genuinely confronted that silence, once you've looked honestly into that mirror without flinching, no one will ever have the power to control you again. They'll accuse you of being cold or detached. They'll claim that you've changed. And they'll be right in their assessment. Because warmth that's motivated by fear isn't genuine kindness. It's simply a form of submission. And yes, you have undergone a transformation. You've made the conscious decision to stop performing. The crowd will miss the version of you that used to entertain their insecurities and make them feel better about themselves. They'll mourn your obedience and conformity, because your newfound stillness serves as a stark reminder of their own internal noise and chaos. Your authenticity reflects their own carefully constructed facade. That's why true solitude initially feels like a form of exile before it gradually transforms into a state of liberation. Every significant transformation begins with some degree of misunderstanding. When you no longer depend on the crowd to define you, they'll begin to label you as dangerous. And again, they'll be correct in their assessment. Because an individual who is no longer afraid of being alone is, by definition, someone who cannot be easily controlled. Machiavelli wisely cautioned, the one who adapts their course of action to the times will ultimately succeed. The one who stubbornly clings to outdated habits will inevitably fail. But solitude isn't simply a habit. It's adaptation in its purest and most essential form. It's the process by which you evolve when the external world refuses to. It's the point at which you cease being a mere product of the tribe and begin consciously constructing your own identity. The herd mentality leads people to believe that power is a collective phenomenon. They mistake volume for true strength. But genuine power resides in the ability to walk alone without needing to offer apologies. To understand that silence isn't simply the absence of meaning, but actually the refinement of it. The more time you dedicate to solitude, the more acute your perception becomes. You begin to discern the hidden mechanisms that drive social interactions. How gossip is often a mask for envy. How empathy can be exploited as a tool for manipulation. And how connection frequently translates to conformity. You begin to recognize how easily individuals sacrifice their authenticity in exchange for a sense of belonging. And how rarely anyone pauses to consider the question, belonging to what? Exactly? The individual who learns to stand apart gains the ability to see what remains hidden to the majority. He observes the endless cycle of drama, arguments, apologies, and repetitive patterns, and understands it for what it truly is, a ritualized form of distraction. He consciously chooses to stop reacting emotionally and begins observing dispassionately. He becomes more strategic in how he utilizes his time, his words, and his presence. This isn't detachment, it's a form of personal discipline. The kind that Machiavelli greatly admired. The ability to rule oneself before attempting to rule others. That's the underlying meaning behind Nietzsche's concept of solitude. It isn't isolation. It's sovereignty. It's the moment you realize that silence doesn't erase you, it reveals you. You were never meant to drown in the collective noise of the crowd. You were intended to rise above it, not as a deity. Not as a reclusive hermit, but as something far rarer. A fully realized human being who belongs entirely to themselves. Because when you consciously stop socializing for the purpose of seeking validation, everything doesn't come to an end, it marks the real beginning. The price of greatness. There's a hidden cost associated with waking up to reality. It's a truth that most people won't readily share with you. They tend to romanticize enlightenment, portraying it as a picturesque sunrise, warm, golden, and inherently redemptive. But the truth is far different. It's more akin to fire. It burns away all the false constructs you've built to survive. When you consciously decide to stop socializing solely for the sake of external validation, you also stop pretending to be someone you're not. And when the performance ends, the silence doesn't reward you, it puts you to the test. It forces to the surface everything you've suppressed beneath layers of applause and approval. The feelings of loneliness aren't a punishment, they're a form of exposure. A stripping away of artifice to reveal what's truly real. Because before you can begin the process of rebuilding yourself, you must first confront what you've allowed yourself to become. Most people never reach this critical stage. They falter the moment solitude ceases to be aesthetically pleasing and starts to feel surgically invasive. But if you persevere, if you resist the powerful urge to retreat back into the comforting noise, something fundamental will begin to shift within you. The world doesn't magically change, your perception of it does. Machiavelli once wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." The Prince, 1532. This statement is often misinterpreted. People mistakenly assume it's a call for cruelty and dominance. But he wasn't advocating for tyranny, he was emphasizing the importance of inner strength. Because love, particularly in its public form, is contingent upon external approval. And the need for approval is the easiest leash that the world can place around your neck. To constantly seek the approval of others is akin to building your palace on the shifting sands of public opinion. And to truly rule yourself, you must cultivate the ability to stand alone, completely unmoved by either praise or blame. That's the true source of the fear people sense when you withdraw, not your physical distance, but your newfound independence. They can no longer manipulate you through kindness and empty flattery. Nietzsche recognized this as the first act of greatness, the emancipation from the restrictive morality of the herd. When you no longer feel the need to be perceived as good in order to be strong. When you cease measuring your worth based on the reactions of the crowd and begin acting in accordance with your own internal compass. You'll start to notice who among your acquaintances becomes anxious when you no longer seek their validation. The friend who resents your periods of silence. The colleague who accuses you of being arrogant. The family member who laments that you've changed. But this is simply the price of gaining clarity. You cease to exist as a mere image in their minds. You begin to exist as a tangible reality in your own. Initially, it's guilt that keeps you awake at night. You feel its persistent gnawing whenever you decline an invitation, switch off your phone, or abruptly end a conversation. That feeling of guilt isn't your conscience, it's dependency withdrawal. It's the hangover from a life spent in relentless pursuit of pleasing others. Guilt isn't evidence that you're doing something wrong, it's proof that you're breaking free from a cycle of unhealthy dependence. Because for years, you were conditioned to equate self-sacrifice with being virtuous. You freely gave your time, energy, and attention, not out of genuine love, but out of a deep-seated fear. Fear of rejection, fear of exclusion, fear of being misunderstood. But true strength isn't found in self-sacrifice, it's found in self-possession. And that journey begins when you consciously stop giving pieces of yourself to people who treat your presence as a mere convenience. Machiavelli wisely said, "The wise man does at once what the fool does finally." The fool waits until he's completely exhausted before setting healthy boundaries. The wise man establishes them early, not out of malice or cruelty, but out of a sense of precision and self-respect. Every hour you reclaim from the clutches of distraction is an act of silent rebellion. Every period of silence you defend is an act of quiet war. Because time is the true currency of self-mastery, and the world profits from your distraction. There's a peculiar transformation that occurs during periods of extended solitude. Initially, the quiet feels unsettling and hostile. Then, gradually, it evolves into something sacred and precious. The same space that once terrified you now begins to nurture and sustain you. Your thoughts grow sharper and more focused. Your instincts become cleaner and more reliable. The noise from the outside world starts to sound foreign, like a dialect you no longer understand. That's when you realize that solitude doesn't isolate you from humanity. It liberates you from the trap of imitation. You no longer find yourself mindlessly copying other people's emotions, opinions, and desires. You observe them with detached curiosity. You seek to understand them. You study them in the same way that a skilled strategist studies the terrain of battle. And this is where true Machiavellian thinking begins, when empathy evolves into genuine insight, and compassion morphs into unwavering clarity. You learn that people aren't inherently evil, they're simply predictable. That most acts of kindness conceal a hidden agenda. That most expressions of anger mask an underlying weakness. That most declarations of love hide a fear of being alone. You stop judging and start truly reading people. The world becomes transparent. You see motives as patterns, emotions as weapons, and praise as bait. You recognize that everyone, even you, is playing the same fundamental game. And once you truly see the game for what it is, you no longer feel compelled to play it. But solitude doesn't just reveal truth, it also redistributes power. Because in the modern world, attention is a highly sought-after commodity. The one who controls your attention ultimately controls you. And the individual who can comfortably sit in silence, who doesn't crave constant stimulation, who can endure hours without external validation, that individual is truly free. He possesses the rarest resource left in existence, his own mind. This is the second act of greatness, detachment without apathy. You consciously choose to stop being reactive. You stop allowing every fleeting message, every perceived crisis, and every juicy gossip session to dictate your mood. You become untouchable, not because you lack empathy or don't care, but because you care selectively. You understand a crucial truth that most people never will. Attention is a form of energy. And whoever manages to capture your energy ultimately controls your fate. Machiavelli wisely cautioned rulers never to depend on others for things they are perfectly capable of doing themselves. Apply that same principle to your inner life. Never depend on others to validate what you already know to be true. Your own opinion of yourself must become self-sustaining, completely insulated from the ever-shifting volatility of public sentiment. Otherwise, you'll spend your entire life chasing after fleeting applause from individuals who are themselves desperately waiting for applause. And then comes the final trial, the return. After the silence has worked its transformative magic, after the feelings of loneliness have softened into a quiet inner strength, you consciously choose to step back into the world. And suddenly, you're different. The same people are still talking. The same petty dramas are still unfolding. But none of it seems to hook you anymore. You're present, but somehow untouched by the chaos. Because solitude hasn't turned you cold, it's turned you into a sovereign. You speak less, but when you do, every word carries significantly more weight. You listen attentively without absorbing the negativity. You engage with others without surrendering your sense of self. You begin to truly understand what Nietzsche meant when he said, "The higher man must live alone. Not necessarily forever, but enough to construct an inner kingdom that cannot be conquered by external forces." The crowd will sense it, that subtle, invisible difference. Some will misinterpret it as arrogance or aloofness. Others will label it as a peaceful presence. But what they're really feeling is the quiet gravity of a person who is no longer swayed by the need for external approval or the fear of rejection. Someone who is no longer desperate to be liked because they've finally learned to respect themselves. And that's the kind of quiet power that no title, no amount of wealth, and no form of recognition can ever imitate. Solitude, then, isn't a retreat from the world. It's a recalibration, a purification of perception, until only unvarnished truth remains. The Machiavellian mind understands this fundamental principle: to master others, one must first master their own perception. And to master perception, one must first master the art of silence. This is the stage where your solitude transforms into something potentially dangerous. Not because you harbor any malicious intent, but because your inherent calm unnerves those who exist in a perpetual state of internal chaos. Your conscious refusal to engage in gossip is misinterpreted as emotional distance. Your self-imposed discipline feels like arrogance to those who lack it. Your hard-won clarity exposes their own underlying confusion. But you've learned to no longer offer explanations or justifications. Because explaining is the currency of those who are still desperately seeking external validation. And you've consciously retired from that bankrupt economy. So, you stop defending your hard-earned peace. You actively protect it instead. You start consciously choosing when to speak, when to fade into the background, and when to take decisive action. Your absence becomes strategic. Your silence becomes tactical. You've become what Machiavelli referred to as a man of fortune, not because fortune arbitrarily favors you, but because you no longer depend on its fickle nature. And somewhere along the winding path between withdrawal and the eventual return, you come to the profound realization of what Nietzsche was truly teaching. Solitude isn't simply about being alone. It's about becoming whole. It's not a wholesale rejection of society. It's a deliberate refusal to lose yourself within it. When you consciously stop socializing for the sole purpose of seeking validation, you don't become less human, you actually become more fully human. Because humanity, in its truest and most authentic form, begins when you no longer feel the need to perform it for an audience. The crowd will likely never understand this fundamental truth. They will mistake your quiet self-assurance for coldness, your emotional distance for pride, and your newfound independence for isolation. But let them cling to their misunderstandings. Their lack of understanding is actually your freedom. Because when you stop needing to be understood by everyone, you become virtually unstoppable. The return of the sovereign. There's a pivotal moment within every person's experience of solitude where the silence ceases to be merely an echo chamber and begins to actively listen. It's a subtle shift. You awaken one morning, and the weight of loneliness that once pressed heavily upon your chest has dissolved into something far steadier and more grounded: presence. You're no longer feeling empty. You're anchored to something deeper within yourself. This is the crucial part that no one ever seems to talk about. They speak of withdrawal as a form of exile, as if consciously choosing to leave the crowd automatically means losing access to the world. But what solitude truly gifts you is a sense of gravity. The kind that bends reality around it. You consciously stop mistaking superficial noise for genuine connection. You stop chasing empty flattery disguised as sincere friendship. You start noticing how incredibly rare true attention has become, not simply the kind that passively watches, but the kind that truly sees you. And for the first time in what feels like forever, you see yourself clearly, without distortion. It's a strange and even terrifying experience to finally meet yourself without the multitude of distorting mirrors that society constantly uses to reflect you back to yourself. But in that profound stillness, something remarkable begins to assemble. The scattered fragments of your own authentic voice, the concrete shape of your own enduring values, the unmistakable outline of a will that is finally, unequivocally yours. Machiavelli once wisely said, "The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves." The Prince, 1532. You begin to understand that this isn't simply a matter of cunning versus brute strength. It's about integration and balance. The truly elevated individual isn't just the fox or just the lion, he embodies both. Clever and perceptive enough to see through the numerous illusions of the world, and courageous enough to walk through them completely untouched. Solitude effectively trains both of these crucial instincts. In periods of profound silence, you cultivate your strategic thinking. In moments of deep stillness, you forge your inner strength. You begin to realize how much valuable energy you've squandered in the past attempting to explain yourself to people who were fundamentally committed to misunderstanding you from the very beginning. You come to the understanding that the world doesn't need to agree with you in order for you to be right. And that's when the ultimate shift occurs, when your very existence no longer depends on external permission. You consciously stop asking the question, "Will they finally accept me?" You start asking yourself the far more important question, "Do I fully accept myself?" That question serves as the crucible, because when you can honestly answer it with calm certainty, you've crossed an invisible threshold, moving definitively from a state of dependence to one of genuine dominion. You've stopped being a mere character in someone else's poorly written play. You've become the author of your own compelling story. Nietzsche referred to this as self-overcoming, the deliberate act of transforming your former weaknesses into powerful instruments. It's not about striving for some unattainable ideal of perfection. It's about perpetual transformation and growth. You consciously take your accumulated pain, your inevitable mistakes, your painful losses, and carefully refine them into unshakable clarity. Like metal being forged in a fiery crucible, solitude shapes you until there's nothing left to burn away but the raw, unvarnished truth. Initially, this truth isolates you, but eventually, It starts to magnetize. People begin to notice not your periods of silence, but the inherent quality of it. It's no longer just an absence, it's an unmistakable presence. A calm so steady and unwavering that others orbit it without fully understanding why. You no longer feel the need to impress anyone. You simply express yourself authentically. You no longer chase connections. You naturally attract them, because in a world that is hopelessly addicted to superficial performance, authenticity is a powerful source of gravity. The Stoics understood this concept long before modern psychology caught up. Marcus Aurelius famously wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." And you feel it now, that impenetrable inner citadel. That sacred territory that no external opinion can ever breach. This is where true and lasting freedom begins. Not the superficial freedom to do whatever you capriciously want, but the far more profound freedom to be whoever you truly are, without apology. But Solitude's final lesson is deeply paradoxical. After you've mastered the art of being alone, you're no longer threatened by the prospect of togetherness. You can consciously choose to re-enter the world without losing yourself to it. Because solitude has taught you the critical art of balance, the ability to exist within chaos without becoming consumed by it. You begin choosing your companions not out of a desperate need, but out of a sense of resonance and shared values. You recognize the crucial difference between mere company and true communion, between superficial affection and genuine attachment, between empathetic understanding and emotionally manipulative debt. And when you connect with others from this place, this unwavering inner wholeness, something genuinely beautiful happens. Connection ceases to be a mere transaction. It becomes a form of translation. You no longer seek empty reflection, you share profound understanding. You no longer feel the need to be completed by someone else, you collaborate as equals. This is the return of the sovereign, the fully realized individual who has consciously walked through periods of profound silence, burned away all illusions, and emerged whole. He doesn't reject the world outright. He simply refuses to be consumed by it. You begin to notice just how small the world's stage truly is. The same predictable conversations, the same petty rivalries, the same tiresome rituals of validation endlessly replay. But you've outgrown the limiting script. You still consciously engage, but your mind exists elsewhere, on the higher ground of awareness. Machiavelli wisely wrote that a skilled ruler must learn how not to be good, and use this knowledge when necessity requires. The underlying point isn't advocating moral corruption, it's about achieving moral clarity. You consciously stop pretending that virtue and survival are always perfectly aligned. You learn to embody both light and shadow, because true wisdom resides precisely where opposites meet. That's what solitude ultimately teaches you, proportion and perspective. You recognize the inherent duality in everything, courage and fear, loyalty and self-interest, love and power. You consciously stop labeling things and start simply observing. You stop merely reacting and start intentionally responding. Your emotions no longer blindly command you, they intelligently advise you. And that's how you truly rise, not by suppressing your own humanity, but by consciously governing it. The underlying truth is that most people don't actually want freedom. They want comfort masquerading as a sense of purpose. But freedom, real, authentic freedom, is simply discomfort that has been thoroughly mastered. It's not the fleeting luxury of escapism, it's the unwavering discipline of self-direction. You awaken each day no longer chasing some elusive meaning, you consciously create it. Your solitude becomes your personal workshop. Your mind, the forge, and your deliberate actions, the tangible proof that your clarity has been transformed into meaningful creation. The external world will continue to spin in its familiar chaos. The noise will keep shouting from the rooftops. But inside yourself, you move with deliberate calm, not because you're indifferent to the world, but because you're fully informed about it. You've learned the ultimate Machiavellian principle. The one who consciously governs himself effectively governs everything around him. So, when people inevitably ask you now, why did you disappear for so long? You won't bother offering a lengthy explanation. You'll simply smile knowingly, because they will likely never understand that your conscious absence was, in reality, your deliberate evolution, that you intentionally left not to escape the world, but to ultimately return to it unshaken, undiluted, and ungovernable. And when you consciously choose to walk among them again, you do so with a marked difference. You speak less frequently, but your words carry significantly more weight. You give less of yourself, but what you give truly matters. You appear less often, but every appearance noticeably shifts the atmosphere of the room. Because power no longer looks like dominance or aggression, it looks like quiet detachment. Authority no longer sounds loud and bombastic, it sounds calm and assured. And wisdom no longer seeks an audience, it creates a palpable silence wherever it stands. So, let them misunderstand you if they choose. Let them label you as distant, changed, or arrogant. They don't actually need to understand the profound transformation you've undergone. They only need to feel its subtle gravity. And if this truth initially unsettles you, it's a sign that it's effectively working within you. Because what you're truly feeling isn't fear, it's the nascent birth of your own sovereignty. It's the conscious recognition that solitude was never your exile. It was, in reality, your initiation. And now, as the world continues its endless chatter, you walk quietly, not necessarily away from it, but consciously above it.